Hello, very warm welcome to you all joining us today on International Women's Day 2022. We would like in particular to recognize women in conflict around the world at this challenging time. Very warm welcome. Our topic today is Women in Corporate Investigations, Breaking the Bias, and we are joined by a very distinguished panel of women leaders in corporate investigations, members of the Association of Corporate Investigators. My name is Mary Swid-Jones. I'm the Executive Director of the ACI. We are a not-for-profit. We are a community of practitioners in corporate investigations, and our mission really is to champion the role of corporate investigator and to meet the professional development needs of our very diverse and inclusive community worldwide. We come from all industries, backgrounds, sectors, geographies, and genders, and we're really happy to be part of this conversation with you today. Before we introduce our panelists, I'd like to turn to Marie of the International Anti-Corruption Academy. A very quick word though, this session is being recorded, and a copy of this recording will be made available on demand to members of the ACI and to the IACA as well. So please note that this is being recorded, and we would like as much as possible to get involved in this conversation, this important conversation today, by dropping your thoughts, your reflections, and your questions into the chat, and we'll try to leave some time for questions at the end. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Marie.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm also grateful to welcome you in the name of the International Anti-Corruption Academy to today's webinar on International Women's Day. This is the second webinar co-organized by the alumni team at the Academy of a series of webinars with the focus on the role of women in the anti-corruption world. And I also want to thank the Association of Corporate Investigations for the collaboration. Just to quickly introduce the Academy, IACA is both an international organization and educational institution with the aim to deliver anti-corruption education and trainings for professionals and practitioners from all sectors. At the same time, we are also working on partnerships with state and non-state actors to also develop anti-corruption initiatives, provide technical assistance, and serve as a platform for exchange and dialogue. We have a great range of educational activities for master degrees, executive diplomas, summer school, tailor-made trainings, and to online trainings on a regular basis. It is important for us to maintain and build a close contact with practitioners and also our alumni from all over the world, which already includes over 3,500 former students and participants from our academic programs. I believe a great opportunity to actually stay in contact as such webinars, and we can have a fruitful discussion on the subject. I'm also happy to give the floor to the first panelist to introduce herself, Monde, who's actually an IACA alumna, and she graduated from one of our master programs, the International Master in Anti-Corruption Compliance and Collective Action in 2019. This is our master program specifically designed to study private sector corruption and corporate investigation techniques. Monde, I'm happy to see you, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marie, and really happy to be here today. A happy International Women's Day to all the women who are attending. Happy International Women's Day to my fellow panelists here. As Marie has introduced me, I am actually an alumni of IACA. I was part of the class of their flagship Masters in Anti-Corruption Compliance, and I believe that it's now in its fourth year running, with the fourth cohort or fifth cohort getting on board. Brief background about myself. I primarily have worked in corporate investigations, working in the financial services sector. I also have worked previously in government financial investigations, and therefore I do actually have experience both in the private sector as well as the public sector. I have currently, for the last 2 years, I've been working in a totally different industry. I transitioned and moved into a more advisory role rather than traditional investigations. I currently head the ethics office of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. And I'd like to pass on the bat to Ebru to introduce herself. Thank you.
Thank you, Monde. Happy Women's Day. And yeah, currently I am head of investigations APAC in Deutsche Bank. you know, it sounds really nice and fancy. It took me a while to understand what I can achieve, and you know, it took me a while to get here. So worked in 4 different countries in Europe, Asia, Middle East. I had the opportunity to work with wonderful women around the world, and I am very happy today to share my experience with yourselves. Originally, I am from Turkey, Istanbul, you know, very male-dominated country, but things are changing, and you know, you can see women, you know, becoming prominent and important in Turkey, in countries in Middle East as well. So, and I have audit background, and slowly I got into investigations. I'm very happy to be here with all these bright and powerful women. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, Ebru. I'd like to pass the mic to Katie.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, my name is Katie Hodson. I'm the head of investigation at the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. Yes, I was just trying to figure out if I'm the oldest person on the panel, but I feel like I've been in investigations for about 33 years now, and I've loved every minute of it, I have to say. It's where I've always felt the most comfortable working. I love my job. I love the people that I work with. And I've always had a lot of career satisfaction in all the investigations I've done. Prior to joining the Global Fund, what's that, 7 or 8 years ago now, I was the head of investigations at Novartis, the pharmaceutical company. And before that, I worked for another Swiss company called SGS, an inspection company, and had some marvelous investigations with them all over the world in all different business sectors. So really enjoyed that. That's where I really learned the craft, I would say. And I started off my working career as a customs officer in the UK. So yes, a long and quite tiring career, I would say, but still enjoying it and still working with some great people that inspire me every day. So
and Katie, regarding your age question, we can take this offline. I can try to beat you on this, maybe.
Very good.
Very proud of my age and years of experience.
Exactly.
Of course. Thank you both. Could I hand over to Joyce, please?
Thank you very much, Mary, and really happy International Women's Day to everyone, men and women alike. It's continuously becoming a celebration for us in general across the board, and I would like to celebrate all the women and have our male counterparts celebrate as well all the achievements that each and everyone has had. You know, for women and for the men that support us in doing the daily jobs that we have to do as investigators. By way of background, I'm currently a principal and head of investigations for control risks in Africa, but you know, most recently undertaking more responsibilities across Europe and the Middle East region. Prior to that, I was a head of investigations for Ruth & Vessels, which is the oldest law firm actually in South Africa at the moment. And I became head of investigations at a very young age, well as with Ruth & Vessels. And just to go back to Katie's point on age, I think I was pretty much about just under 30 when I became head of investigations there. And that's something that we'll talk about later in this conversation, you know, when we talk about breaking the bias and pretty much being a young head of investigations, you know, undertaking a role in a corporate law firm that operates pretty much across South Africa, but in many other African countries. Prior to Ruth & Vessels, as very much like Ebru, in the audit field, working for two of the big audit firms, big four audit firms across Africa, and previously in London, where I started my career with one of the big four. And you know, and I'm an accountant. Many people ask, how did you get into investigations? You know, there's that thought that investigators are, you know, ex-police, and you know, when you say you're an accountant, what does that really mean? And you know, in Africa in particular, it's a profession that's up and coming, corporate investigations. Many stories to tell on that, and happy to engage in all the discussions that we'll have later on in this session. Thank you, Mary.
Thanks, Joyce. And finally, Kate.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me here today. I'm delighted to be here with this fabulous panel. So a bit about me. I began my career when I joined the police at 19 years old, and as you did back then, everybody had to start in uniform. So I did a couple of years uniform in the West End, which for someone with a fairly sheltered upbringing was quite a rude awakening. But I went on to do my detectives exams, and then on the Borough CID investigated everything a sort of Borough CID did at the time, whether that's frauds, high value thefts, serious assaults and threats to life. But I then went on to specialise on the Specialist Crime Directorate into investigating shootings. From there I took promotion and was a DS in Hackney, where I had responsibility for the riot investigation team and a confidential proactive firearm investigations team. I moved from firearms to handbags because I then took up a role at Burberry leading their investigations function. And I was really, really lucky here to quickly increase my area of responsibility. So as well as sort of pure investigations, I took on everything from running their whistleblowing line, their anti-bribery and corruption program, data analytics and board reporting, travel risk, executive protection. So it was a lot of fun, and I can't imagine a role where I'd get to be sort of bouncer on the front row of a fashion show to the next day crunching stock loss figures and then dealing with sort of investigations that you sort of expect within a large organization. So that was a great role for me. I then left there after I had my child, just because I couldn't see how I was going to do both, if that makes sense. And so I set up my own company, Mass People Support, which offers investigations, HR and ethics support to organisations, and it is a way for me to balance having a home life and a working career.
Thanks, Kate, and I'm very inspired by all your journeys. So, sisters in corporate investigations, if I can ask you, looking back through your journeys, can you give some examples of the biases you may have encountered as women in corporate investigations, and how did you deal with them? How did you challenge them? If I could turn to you first, please, Ebru.
Yes, I think, you know, when we were preparing for the webinar, I gave you some examples, you know, working as a young woman, you know, in my younger years, I put lots of pressure on myself. And obviously I was working in oil and gas industry, and I was trying to, you know, fit in with men. And you know, I remember I would remove my nail polish and tie up my hair, you know, before the big assignments. And at the time also, you know, there was a presumption that women would do the groundwork and the detailed document review, and men would take the lead to run the interviews, you know, to run the show. And, you know, that's why, you know, in my younger years, I thought if I remove my nail polish and then if I look like a man, maybe they will allow me to, you know, to conduct these interviews. Then, you know, I will never forget, you know, I shared this moment with you, Mary. You know, one day I said to myself, I can do this. You know, why do I need a man to run the show next to me and I do all the groundwork? So I realized that I just needed to believe in myself. You know, I decided on a big assignment. There was a big, like 6-hour interview to be done. And I said to my boss, I can do it. Obviously, you know, it was not that like easy, you know, to break the bias, but I said to myself, I'm going to do it. Then just before the interview, my boss said, "Are you ready?" I said, "Give me only 1 second." And you know, he was like watching me, and I changed my shoes. I put my high heels on, and from that moment on, and I will never forget this moment, it was 2010 or 2011, you know, I said to myself, I'm going to stay woman. I'm going to stay true to myself, and I can do it. Yeah, I'm proud of this moment, and now, you know, I don't feel the need to remove my nail polish anymore, and I made it, being true to myself. My hope is that, you know, we all educate our boys to respect women, so that the future generation of women are recognized sooner in their careers. So it didn't happen to me. I was recognized a bit later in my life, but I hope in the future women will be recognized sooner. Yeah, this is one of the examples I can share with you.
Thank you, Ebru, and that's a very poignant example. Thank you so much for that. And in fact, many members of our ACI community who are women in investigations have said it's taken them quite some time to get to senior level roles. They might be doing some senior level work, but not with the job title or the pay that they deserve. So this is a very real and still recurring issue. So thank you for raising that. Katie, can I turn to you, please? Some challenges in bias that you've encountered, how you've overcome them.
Yes, I kind of, my mind goes back to when I was younger as well, and I have to say there's one investigation that really sticks in my mind, and that's when I was doing like a carousel fraud investigation in Croatia, and I just remember arriving with a translator and a very older gentleman who happens to share my birthday. We found out as we were traveling together, and we stayed in contact many years after. But yeah, he was very senior in years, and he was my translator, and we arrived at the office, and the office manager and, you know, his number two greeted us and understood we were there for the investigation, and he directed all his questions to the translator, thinking he was the guy in charge. And when they realized it was actually me running the investigation, they just like laughed in my face, basically. And I just remember feeling really kind of like letting it just go over my head, asking for the documents that I needed to. You know, they brought me the wrong files. They did everything they could to kind of obstruct the, you know, the process. But in the end, I was able to kind of get to the bottom of what had happened in this particular case. And I think they were just actually amazed that I was able to find out what I found out. And they kind of apologized to me at the end of that investigation for their behavior. And they took me out to dinner to a very nice restaurant to thank me. And I was, you know, I was reflecting a bit about what Joyce says. You know, it's we can't break the bias on our own. You know, we have to, you know, we have to work with people to let them understand we can contribute and we do add value and we are good at what we do. So that was just one anecdote that kind of sticks with me, and I always remember that investigation, and I wonder if it was really because it was such a fantastic case, or I just felt so much personal pride that I was able to, you know, to find out what had happened, deliver this, you know, fantastic result for the organisation that I was working for. And maybe it's a bit of both, but it really stays with me, that investigation.
Thanks, Katie. And a real example of how professionalism and showing what professionalism looks like and help to break this bias as well. Monday, how about you? Can you share some experiences, please?
Thanks, Mary. I think I would probably resonate with what mine would resonate with what Katie has just shared around, you know, sometimes, as particularly in the early days as a young female investigator, being part of a team that was really primarily male dominated, and I found myself, being the only female in that team. My teammates obviously wanted to look out for me, I think, many a time. And for instance, when tasks came that related to travel on mission, to go and undertake investigations outside, the town, or particularly outside town, people would opt to say, well, you're the only female, so you probably stay home, you're a mother, and I know you can stay in the office, and the males would travel. But for me, of course, that was coming from a place of good intentions, but at the same time, I think, whilst it's coming from a place of good intentions, I think it undermines you as an investigator, because at the end of the day, if you're an investigator, you are on equal footing as your male counterparts. But for me, the way I addressed it was to volunteer. I started to volunteer when I realized that I'll probably never get the opportunity if I don't raise my hand up. I started to volunteer when there was an opportunity to travel. And before it all, I think my teammates realized I was just as good as an investigator as they were. And therefore, I think it's important for us to be able to speak out when we recognize that maybe we are being left out by virtue of us being female. We have to speak up. We have to raise our hands that we can also do it, because I think it is only when you are able to speak up and you can demonstrate to people that I'm just as good as my male counterparts, that I think you will be able to place yourself there amongst the men. So I think as women, we should not fear. In my case, particularly, I think I volunteered knowing, yes, I was a mother, knowing that I was a wife, but at the same time, I made sure that I was able to ensure that my domestic arrangements were well put together. I didn't have to worry that there was no one to look after my children. I didn't have to worry that there was no one to look after my home. So it's, for women, obviously, we have to juggle a lot of responsibilities, but it can be done. And I think there are a lot of us that can demonstrate that it is possible to juggle. It's hard. It may be difficult, but it is possible to do it, especially if you love the job. I always laugh that I came into investigations almost by accident. Like Joyce, I had an accounting background. I was an accountant. I studied accounts at school. But once there was an opportunity to when the first financial crime investigations unit was being set up under the government law enforcement wing, we were one of the first cohort of investigators to join, and that's how I came to join that team. But I didn't realize that it's a job that I would love. It's a job that I would really, really have passion for, and to date, I love the job. I don't think I would have chosen anything else. So I think as women, we need to put ourselves there and volunteer to, and because we would just be as good as our male counterparts. Thank you.
Thanks, Monday. And Kate?
Yeah, so one of the things I've been thinking about is we talk about gender bias and we automatically focus on the woman. So if we're thinking about maternity leave and the impact that has on a woman's career, I actually don't think we're going to level that playing field unless we look at the gender bias that happens to men. So, and the reason I guess I've thought about this is when myself and my husband had our child, we were determining how we were going to manage childcare, and we came to the decision that we would do that between the two of us. But there was that kind of moment of realization, I guess, for both of us, of the impact. Not only is that going to have on my career, but now he's going to go part-time. What impact does that have on his career, and how is he perceived? And I think there is a perception on men that go part-time, are they lazy? Don't they care about their career? Don't they want to take it to the next level? And that is a worry and a concern. But actually it was, part of me was a bit like, well, that's something women have had to deal with forever. So, but actually, we're not going to level the playing field up unless we make it fair for everybody, and more women won't feel like they've got options unless men feel like they've got options too, I guess.
That's a really good point. Thanks, Kate. Joyce, can I turn to you about some challenges and how you've overcome them?
Sure. Thank you, Mary. I think I'll speak from a perspective of being a female investigator and a woman of color conducting investigations, specifically based currently in Johannesburg. So I'm from eastern part of Africa, and I've been in Johannesburg for the last 10 years. I came to Southern Africa to conduct some work from one of the big 4 audit firms that I used to previously work for, and then decided to stay on. But I think we face challenges that is almost a double-edged sword for us operating in the industry, because you have to go against all odds, with South Africa having a rich history of racial issues, as well as an appreciation for the profession of investigation being one that's grown very much in the last 15 years, but being primarily male-dominating industry for us in the country. And I remember joining the law firm I previously worked for, which is one that at the time was about 130 years old, operating in South Africa. So obviously, you know, South Africa being a young democracy of about 25 years at the moment, the firm had been in existence for pretty much a long time before I joined. So I joined as a senior manager and worked very well with my wonderful colleagues. And then 2 years later, I was appointed as the head of investigations, undertaking, you know, various kinds of investigations, all the way from misconduct cases to financial misappropriation. And I had to engage with some of the clients that had been part of the firm for very many years. And as you can imagine, it's not easy having someone that is, you know, young Black female leading on investigations. And I found I had to do double the work, to be quite honest. I had to prepare so much before I went into meetings. And there were times when I would go into meetings and I would sort of be overshadowed by conversations that were not even in English. You know, you have conversations happen in Afrikaans, and then, you know, so when, you know, when there's some level of comfort in the room that, you know, you need to be roped into conversations, when, you know, when discussions are about the critical matter at hand, everyone turns to English, and, you know, just for a small portion of time. And so you sort of have to sort of work through that discomfort. But what I found to be quite helpful was, you know, after the recognition of the quality of the work that's done, everyone sort of moves past the fact that you're a woman of color, and there's a huge appreciation for the value that you bring to the work that's being delivered. And so one piece of advice that I would have for young female investigators is your quality of work usually trumps any bias that you might face in the workplace, and just the empathy and the leadership that you present as you work on engagements and work with team members and external stakeholders really comes through when you're supporting with delivery of investigation tasks. So there's obviously a recognition of the fact that there's discomfort at some stages of being a female investigator, but just that quality of work, the empathy that you have to people's cultures, people's backgrounds, a recognition that, you know, it's not just the task that you have before you, but just a general appreciation of social culture norms that allows you to have that emotional intelligence when you're working through cases in the delivery of your tasks. I'll just pause there for now, Mary, to allow for further conversation.
Thank you, Joyce. Really good points. I'm just thinking about team dynamics within an investigations team. I think, Ebru, you touched upon the allocation of work. Could you all share some experiences about how work was subdivided, what type of investigations were being allocated to women versus men, other genders? Do you have any comments and reflections on that, and what can be done better to ensure that all have an equal opportunity within the investigations team? You know, who wants to take that first?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mentioned this in my younger years, you know, my experience, which is not necessarily, you know, the experience of everyone, but, you know, there was a presumption that, you know, women will do Excel, data analysis, all the groundwork, and then the man will get this nice file and they will turn up and conduct interviews, because, you know, the woman will do the detail work, and the men were there to, you know, to lead the case. It's changing, And definitely, you know, people like me, like, you know, I believe in diversity and inclusion. And, you know, in my team, I think there are assignments which will be allocated to women or men, or they can work together. You know, I try to ingrain this into mentality of the younger generation. And I think in APAC, it's good, you know, people recognize that diversity and inclusion is required, but women can be a bit shy, you know, but definitely, you know, I'm encouraging Asian women around me. You know, I have been in Singapore for 7 years, to be there, brave. You know, I'm sharing my experience, what happened to me, you know, what I could have done better in the past, you know, so that they get there earlier than me, as I said. So I'm a firm believer of diversity inclusion. I think we can have stronger teams, you know, and as Joyce said, you know, women and men brains work differently, but it's complementary. It doesn't mean that one is better than the other, but you know, it's a fact of life. Now, if my husband is listening, he is smiling. We have higher EQs in general, and you know, this can be leveraged on, you know, and as Joyce said, because we have in general higher EQs, you know, we understand people, we create relationship easier, and then this empathy we have towards the others can be leveraged on. And yeah, this is my experience of diversity inclusion.
Thank you. Thanks. Anyone else want to comment on this?
I think when it comes to setting up your investigations teams, going back to the recruitment process, and sometimes we putting barriers up for people in less privileged positions, whether that's race or sex or whatever, because if you're asking for a master's degree for a entry-level investigator's role, why are you asking for that? And it's something I see so much on advertisements automatically. So I think thinking about what you're recruiting for and why. And you know, when I applied for the role at Burberry, they were asking for like the murder squad level of interviewing tier, and I didn't have that, but I applied anyway. But I know quite often it said that women don't apply for things unless they've got 100% on what's on a job application. So I think really think like, why would you need murder level interviewing ability skills when you're going into a fashion brand to deal with, you know, mainly misconduct, but you know, other serious things. But you certainly don't need that level of skill. So why were they asking for it? And they didn't even know that the level I had was below that. They didn't question it. They just assumed the level I had was above because it was a different number. So they didn't even know what they were asking for. Clearly, it had been a copy and paste job from another investigations role on the, you know. So I just think, what are we recruiting for and why?
Yeah. Thank you, Kate. It's really good. That does resonate a lot with our community. I'm often asked about the education and the qualifications because many of our head roles require a master's degree. Just kind of putting a bit of segue into this next question. What kind of qualifications and training did you undertake to get to where you've got in your career? And how did you juggle everything while you were studying? Monday, I can turn to you because I know you've done the Masters at IACA.
Thanks so much, Mary. And I mean, as I said, initial background was in accounts. Never thought one day when I was starting out that I would one day be in the world of corporate investigations, but loving every moment of it. So with me, I think one thing I recognized at the very early stage, at least when I got midway in my career, was the need for continuous professional development. I think it's very, very important. Like with many other careers and professions, I think it's something that people in the investigations field, whether women or men, should take quite seriously. I think one of the things that I think at least a couple of years back is that you did not really find qualification and courses that were really tailored for us investigators. So you kind of had to make do with maybe doing courses in other professions, to upskill. But we see more and more, qualifications, courses, and training being tailored to suit the field of investigations. In my case, I embarked on doing a master's degree around 2017. I thought it was very important. I was very deliberate about it, that I did not just want to do any other master's. I wanted to do something that resonates with the field I was in. And so the IACA master's degree at the time, it was as I said, it was the first cohort. They had another master's that they were running. But then they decided to introduce another master's program tailored for those that were in the corporate world. And therefore, I took the opportunity. I was lucky. I was one of the privileged to have had a partial scholarship from IACA. It was, I would say, it was intensive at the time, because it was, in a way, a full-time program, whereas we did part of it was done via distance learning, and part of it we had to actually go in class and attend classes in Vienna, and that was done over a 2-year period, and every 4 months we were in Vienna to have in-class sessions. At the same time, I was still having my full-time job. I only took time off to go and attend classes, took a couple of leave days off. I was still a mother to teenagers that were at critical stages of their lives. I'm still a mother. I was still a wife. And you won't believe it, I was also a grandmother and a full-time caregiver to my grandson, because my daughter herself was in, first year of her university, and we had made a decision as a family to allow her continue with her studies. So I took on the role of being the mother and caregiver. So I was juggling all these roles, but I think I would say today I could say it was worthwhile. I would say having a very good support system is what got me to where I was, managed to finish the master's with a very good pass grade. The support system at home, the support system also with my employers that allowed me to be able to have time off. I think also that helped me. The support system with my family, support system with my helpers who I've had for quite some time also did add value, because without that, I don't think I would have been able to juggle all those responsibilities. So having a good support system for me matters the most also when you are juggling all these responsibilities, obviously being a mother, but at the same time trying to build a career. I think that's very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Monde. And I think all of us on this call can attest to the village who has been supporting and making it so that we can do the jobs we love. Katie, can I turn to you, because I know you were the first woman to do the particular master's that you did. So it'd be interesting to hear from you.
Yeah, it was back in 1999, and in fact, Joyce, I've heard you talk about this before, but I was lucky to have quite a few really great mentors, and one of the advice I took from it was my boss at the time, and who gave me the start. He gave me the chance to work. I was quite young, not as experienced as other people, but he really gave me a chance. And one day he turned to me and he said, Katie, you'll never be in a management position in investigations unless you do a degree, like a master's. And it gave me pause for thought, and I thought, okay, he's probably right. So I started on this course of risk, crisis and disaster management at Leicester University. It was a master's, and it was the first year they'd actually run it, and I was the only woman on it as well. But I was really glad I did that, and I'm really glad that I listened to him and took the advice, because Kate, you're absolutely right. When you look at job adverts nowadays, they all require that higher level university degree. So yeah, and then my children came along, and then I don't know, Monde, I don't know where you get your energy. I don't know whether I could have done that while looking after young children, but luckily, the timing was right for me, and I was very glad I took the opportunity.
Thanks, Katie. Joyce, did you want to add anything to this?
Sure. I mean, hands up to all the ladies that have juggled studying and working and being mothers. I'm a mom to just one boy, but I have 7 other children that I take care of, and I just can't imagine doing my studying and working, and it is a a lot of work, especially when you're head of investigations, as most of the ladies on the call are. It's quite difficult, but it can be done. One thing that I've seen that's been super helpful, like Katie mentioned, is just the mentors that you have going through your career. Quite coincidentally, all my mentors have been men. I remember when I was approached to join Control Risks 2.5 years ago. One of the things that inspired me greatly about joining is I had, I was interviewed by the head of investigations for Europe, Middle East, Africa, and the former head of investigations for Africa at the time, who are both male. And we had a really good conversation. And after that, they say to me, after this, you're going to if we're happy, you're going to have a chat with our boss. She sits in London. And I thought, oh my word, they have a head of investigations who's a lady. And I was very excited about that. And I've never said it to them actually, but that was one of the, points that made me sort of, buy into joining the firm at the time we had the conversation. And I've since, got to work with her fantastic lady and fantastic male colleagues that I have, fantastic team. But I came from a world previously that was super male dominated. All my mentors have been men from the time I was a very young investigator all the way growing up. And I'm so happy to inspire many young female investigators, and I have mentees that are female investigators, because it's such a rubber stamp on the journey and just an attribution of the growth of the profession. You have female investigation heads taking up investigations role across the world. In Africa in particular, where it's super male dominated, it's super inspiring to see very many young female investigators take up the role, reach out for advice when they have challenges that you've had previously. And with the world growing and sort of having a global community such as the ACI that allows us to tap into other investigators, not just from Africa, but from across the world, it's really encouraging to share and to inspire and to mentor and to have mentees to learn from, to be quite honest. I learn a lot from my mentees. It's the digital era now, and they're very, very well skilled. April, I saw your son helping you with something on your laptop. We have a lot to learn from the youngsters, and it's really a relationship where we not just share, but we learn from the young female investigators as well as the young male investigators as well. We found that it's very encouraging to just across the journey to share across all the genders, just as we work through, to share on our experiences, what people take for granted for female investigators, share and offer them insights on how we feel, how we manage the challenges that are not too obvious to someone that's of a different gender.
Thank you, Joy.
Yeah, Joyce, adding to what you have said, me too. I had great mentors, and one in particular, very experienced male mentor. And what was missing, because I have audit background, what was missing, it was interviewing skills. And when I first started, I grew up watching him interviewing, and he was such a great mentor. He organized all kind of courses, I was trained by psychologists, lawyers, and I attended every single interviewing skills course which existed in London, I think, thanks to this super boss I had. Then watching him and also creating my own style was a great journey. So yeah, having great mentors as male is male mentors is very important as well. Supportive man as well as supportive woman. Yeah, I agree with you.
Thanks, Deborah. And Kate, I know we had a discussion before about the role of, our interactions with women as well, to women in teams and investigations team, and women uplifting other women. I don't know if you want to say that.
Yeah, definitely, because I think sometimes, I don't know about anyone else's experiences, but sometimes female leaders can be the hardest as a female to work for, and there can be that notion of, well, I had to go through these hurdles, so should you. And I've even heard a female leader speak about another female on the team saying, well, she's got a rich husband, so she doesn't deserve pay rises. Like that type of notion coming from another woman, like I think people find shocking. But in my experience, sometimes women can be so much tougher on other women. And I think that, we need to stop all of that. We need to start sending the elevator back down and lifting each other up, and, but just as you would anybody on the team as well. And, I'm the same as a couple of people have mentioned here. I've had some really fantastic male mentors and champions, and I just don't think us women need to be pitted against each other. And I think I mentioned to you previously, Mary, when I was on a team and I was one of the only females, and a new female was joining, and the whole build up to her starting was, oh, you've got competition now, and really prior to her even entering the building, we were pitted against each other. But I made sure I went out of my way, and we're still friends to this day, because I thought, I'm not going to have that narrative like put on me that we have to be pitted against each other. So I just think considering how you're treating other people, and if there's a challenge that you faced, how do you prevent others from facing that, rather than just expecting them to jump through the hoops as well?
Thank you. Thanks. If I could turn to you all and ask you the question, what would be your advice to the current and future corporate investigators, the next generation of corporate investigators? Basically, from your experience, what are your top bias breaking tips? If I could go to you first, Monday.
Thank you, Mary. I would say, first and foremost, seize those opportunities. I think irrespective of where you are at, whether you're a junior, or you're just in midway through your career, if an opportunity comes up that you deem you are suited for, take that opportunity. It doesn't, it won't take away anything by you attempting. I think as women, sometimes we don't do ourselves justice because we fear to seize the opportunities. I remember at the time I was applying for a role which was the senior level role as the regional head of investigations. One of the questions I think people kept asking me, so there were people that were surprised that I wanted to compete for the role. There were all sorts of people had all sorts of comments around, oh well, you applying for this role, may not be a stable role to apply for. You are leaving the stability of having held a country role, and you want to apply for this regional role. What if things don't go well? What will happen? But I believe that unless you take a risk on something, you will never know the outcome. And it worked out well. I held the role for a number of years, and I believe for me that was a stepping stone for me to get into other roles, because you can only move along, the ladder and succeed in your career, I think, if you take up the opportunities. And some opportunities on the face of it may not look very good, may not look very lucrative, but I think as the individual, if you know what you're looking out for, be prepared, take a risk. There is no harm in putting through that application. You never know, you make it to the shortlist, and but I think don't sit back and say, well, I'm probably not suited for that role. Only a very experienced investigator maybe can apply for that role. You never know. The world of corporate investigations has evolved and grown over the years, and I see on a daily basis opportunities across the globe being advertised. And if only people could apply for those opportunities, I think you never know where you would end up. And I think at the end of it all, also leverage on the support network that you have, be it the support network that you have within the workplace, the mentors. Don't be afraid to ask, and don't be afraid to make mistakes, because it's only through making the mistakes that we'll learn. I think it may have been Kate that talked about women who only apply for something if they think they meet or they tick all the boxes. You know, sometimes you don't have to tick all the boxes. Sometimes maybe you meet 6 out of the 10 criteria. Give it a shot. So let's not be afraid. You know, let's leverage on those that have gone before us. Let's ask. Let's not be afraid to ask. That would be my advice. Thank you.
Thank you, Monse. And before I turn to the next panelist, I just wanted to highlight a really nice comment we've had in my team of auditors as the head of audit and ethics. There were 6 women versus 3 men, and I have no hesitation to accept that the top 2 in terms of work ethics and dedication were women. Thank you for that comment. Thanks. Could I move now to Ebru? Your top tips.
Yes, I think, you know, be yourself, and don't put extra pressure on yourself, trying to demonstrate that you are equal to men. We are not equal to men, we are different. And we are, like, you know, women, and we can do it. So, you know, don't be ashamed of a woman. And, you know, when I was younger, I was traveling a lot, and one day I was in a very remote country running an investigation. My son was in a hospital, and I was ashamed of mentioning that he's in hospital, and I was ashamed of asking to go back to London to be with him. You know, I carried on, and I stayed 15 days. Finally, he was fine. But you see now how I am. My son came to help me fixing something on my screen, and I'm not ashamed of showing this. You know, I'm like, he's with me, he's helping me, and don't be ashamed of this. And you know, because you have a son, it doesn't mean that you can't succeed and you can't be head of investigation, or you can't be a lead in a leadership position. So, you know, it's very important, because when I was younger, I never mentioned anything about my son in the office place, about my husband, never. You know, I changed completely. I am myself, and I think this is the biggest advice I will give to younger generation.
Thank you, Ebru. Katie, can I turn to you, please?
Yeah, I'm going to keep it quite simple. I would say work hard, but don't kill yourself in the process. Believe in your capabilities and be good at what you do. You know, invest in your personal development, just as Mondo was saying. Definitely learn from your mistakes, because you can't grow and learn unless you're, you know, brave enough to try. And definitely seize the opportunities as they come along. I think that's super important. I always remember, like, there were points in my career, and I can remember them very vividly, when I think, right, I'm ready for the next challenge now. And once I'd made up that mind in my head, then that kind of gave me that, you know, that belief that yes, I can apply for this, and I will give it a go, and if it works out, it works out, and if it doesn't, then there'll be other jobs, you know. So I definitely, you know, seize those opportunities. I'm glad I don't have to go last, because I don't know what's left if we're all using up these great tips.
Thanks, Katie. Joyce.
Katie, you're right. I mean, all the tips have been step. I think for me, one thing that I find we just all need to be aware of is, as you grow and you progress in your career, your personal life changes as well. And so I found that I've had to manage quite closely my personal life, especially with my spouse, as I grow and progress in my career. And so you need to be very aware that there are serious challenges that come with professional growth that have a direct impact on your personal life. And especially when you're going through the growth as a young adult, progressing into your 30s and 40s and later into your 50s plus, you want to sort of curb and discuss the growth and discuss your vision in your growth with your spouse, and just make sure that you're on the same page. because it can be quite challenging when you have to juggle the complexities that we have as investigators and the amount of travel that comes with it, and then the growth, the professional growth, you know, in the corporate ladder as you grow up. So just, you know, I just want to flag that it's something that is not, we shouldn't shy from discussing it. It's a reality, and I would advise anyone that's thinking of progressing up the corporate ladder, progressing as an investigator, and being up for the challenge, that it's an exciting time, but just make sure you're well aligned with your spouse. I'm extremely lucky to have a fully supportive husband, a really well bubbly supportive child, and my other children that I take care of that are just a great support system. But you need to communicate very clearly quite early in the process, just so that you continue to be on the same page, and then you don't find yourself compromising one or the other during your process of growth. I'll pause there for Kate.
I think for me, just check that you're not reinforcing the biases with what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing. And I go back to my early career when I trained to do the support stuff that the riot police do. So it wasn't full time, it was in addition to my role on team as uniform. And in the training, you have sort of petrol bombs thrown at you, you carry a shield as big as I was. And, you know, like you have to stand in the road and these horses come charging up behind you and you have to split at the last second to let them through. And I absolutely hated it. But because during that training, I was led by someone that kept saying, come on, you're the woman, do this, you lift the shield above everyone. And it kind of, I took that as the challenge. Okay, I can do this, I'm going to show it. I then decided I was going to put my application in to do that full time. But I mean, I was actually crying in the helmet. I hated it that much. The petrol bombs, it was all too much. I didn't want to do it. I didn't enjoy it. Yet I was going to do that full time because I felt like I had something to prove. But it was only because a male sergeant of mine pulled me to one side and he said, why are you applying full time for the riot police, CSG it was called? He's like, you will make an excellent detective. Why are you doing this? And although I was a bit affronted at the time, actually his chat with me did sink in, and I thought, why am I doing this? Why am I trying to prove to other people that I don't know, that I don't care about, that I can do something when actually my skills lie elsewhere? So I could have sabotaged my whole career and not be sitting here today if I had not had someone intervene. So yeah, just check why you're doing what you're doing and don't feel you've got anything to prove.
Thank you. Thanks to all the panelists for a very insightful conversation. I know that we were coming into the hour. So Marie, I know you would like to say a bit about the IACA scholarships for women. Thank you all.
Yes, I'm happy that I can wrap up with a positive message as well, that we at IACA, we have some scholarships available for women from least developed countries who are working in the business and compliance sector. And these scholarships are for women who wants to participate in any open online trainings. And we have trainings about several subjects, such as ethical leadership, business, human rights, development code of conduct, or emerging technologies, like quite a big range. And as I think it's quite important to also further educate yourself, I'm happy to share this with all of you. And thank you to all of you. It was great listening to your experience, and I think we're all strong women. And to celebrate International Women's Day together was quite a pleasure. And also thank you to the Association of Corporate Investigators and you, Mary. Thanks a lot.
Thank you all. Thank you all, and see you next time.
See you. Bye-bye.
Happy International Women's Day.
Bye.
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 Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.